Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Jeffress with the Alliance for Innovation and Infrastructure, also known as AII. And for those of you who don't know, the month of August is Energy Month, which means we're investigating all of the energy resources, technology, infrastructure, and public policy that powers our country and the world. During Energy Month, I speak with industry experts to gain insight on what they do and their perspective on our nation's energy infrastructure. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Brittany Thomas, an energy optimist who leads a team dedicated to partnering with energy companies as they tackle one of the most significant challenges of our time. So, Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Andrew.
To begin, I'd like for you to tell our audience a little bit about your background and what motivated you to start the Lumix Communications Group.
Absolutely. So I started off my career. I'm a PR communications person. I have a deep family history in oil and gas, particularly in the South with deep water. Several family members that worked in the industry and throughout college, they're like, hey, Brittany, how about you do an internship at one of the big names down here? And it's actually Shell at the time. And I was like, I'm not going into oil and gas. That's not fun. Who wants to do that? Joke's on me. My entire career has been in energy. And that passion that I didn't realize was there, but was kind of embedded in me, has kind of propelled me throughout all of my career and to eventually starting Lumix. So from going from the corporate side on EMP traditional with Chesapeake Energy for several years and getting kind of a hands-on experience in their technical groups and trying to educate people on natural gas and hydraulic fracturing and all of that, I really got to see firsthand the opportunities there are in the industry just for education,
Mm.
just for helping people understand one, how critical energy is, and then the way it actually works within their communities. So that was kind of that first rooting within me. And then after I left there, I kind of went into an agency world to where I was able to work with several different types of energy. And I think that was such a critical piece, especially with having such a oil and gas heavy background. So then being able to jump into the midstream, the renewable spaces, and the energy service companies that kind of provide that technology that help the improvements that we're seeing today. So once I was able to get kind of that exposure, one of the big things that I started seeing was that just like a lot of things in our world right now, it was very polarized. And I was like, how is energy polarized? Energy is at the core of everything that we do. If you care about social justice issues, you should care about energy. If you care about the economy, you should care about energy. If you care about your household, energy is at the top of it. So to not going back to my college for one, that was like, who wants to do energy? Everyone should want to do energy. And so right now, with how polarized it is, I was seeing that these energy companies have a wonderful story to tell, but unfortunately, they weren't getting out and telling it. And so people that were not as informed or have been dictating kind of the policy, they've been dictating the regulatory, the media, with all good intents. But it was that lack of the industry telling their story that was really preventing collaboration within this space. It's not one source that's going to solve our energy crisis. It's going to be all of these sources coming together, all of those engineers, all of those technology experts really innovating and figuring out what the solutions are. If you look at over the past 30 years, the US alone went from being energy dependent to being energy independent and being an actual exporter of energy. And so, who were those minds? Who were those individuals that collaborated together and created that progress? Let's tap into that and let's create the progress for the next 30 years. So what's really on the crux of that I was like, you know what? Storytelling. It's getting that out there, getting that messaging and helping these companies do that. And that's the reason why I started Lumix Communications. At our core, all of our team members, we are energy optimists. We do not think that this is a doom and gloom. We think there's so much opportunity out there and so many great people that are working together to do this. And we just wanted to join and help those individuals do that.
What does it mean to drive the energy evolution?
So to drive the energy evolution, I think that's one of the key things is realizing is that we're not transitioning. Nothing's going to get left behind in reality. It is going to be an evolution of sources, skills, technology, and all of that. We're taking things that we have and how do we evolve them and make them better for our future. And to drive that, in my opinion, is to be proactive in that space. It is an evolution and not a transition. And so finding like minds and finding companies that are kind of evolving that and being on the forefront, it's really helping them be that proactive, having that proactive approach instead of reactive, which is what we see a lot in our industry. And so the more reactive we are to what's happening around us, we're not able to drive anything, to be honest. It's going to have to be that proactive approach that is going to drive where energy is headed, and how infrastructure and innovation will play a role in that.
I would love for you to talk about strategic positioning and stakeholder engagement. Why are those two things so important?
Oh man, they're like the two big buckets. I mean, there's so many things you can do within communications. And honestly, I feel like they all fit within that. So, strategic positioning, I look at it as how is a company actually telling their story? How are they positioning themselves? How are they positioning the industry? So, a lot of thought leadership activities. So, we have so many different experts and innovations that can happen. And that really comes down to people. Companies, we want to position them, but at the core, it's people that are at these companies. People want to do business with people. People trust people. People don't trust companies. And so, how do we position the people within companies to show their expertise and to show the impact that they're having in that story? Strategic positioning can come from how you talk about yourself on your website. It can come down to how are you engaging with your peers and like minds on LinkedIn and sharing and collaborating your thoughts. It can come down to what conferences are you attending, down to how are you engaging within your peer groups and within the other stakeholders that are part of the story that you're trying to tell. But then you have stakeholder engagement, and that's where things kind of shift a little bit. Stakeholder engagement is how you actually engage with the people that are in the community. So the first part, strategic positioning, you're positioning yourself, you're telling your story, you're getting that information out there. But the other part is where the rubber meets the road. And so we see this a lot of times with infrastructure projects. Stakeholder engagement is one of the number one things that I do think is an opportunity for infrastructure. A lot of times everyone knows they need it, but when they bring in stakeholder engagement in an infrastructure project, it's typically too late. It goes back to that concept of reactive versus proactive. And so bringing in stakeholder engagement and in engaging your stakeholders, the communities, the policymakers, the regulators within the areas that the infrastructure is going to be built out or be operated in early on, and getting their buy-in is a really big piece of what we do on that side. It's really, you want the communities that are going to have the infrastructure in their area to be bought in and to be feel like this project, see the benefits and see that they are being considered. But if you come through right before construction begins, they feel like it's happening to them instead of happening with them. And so stakeholder engagement is the process of getting people on board, because a lot of times, like I said, we have so many great engineers and project managers and accountants that have really developed these awesome plans on paper. So, how do you make sure they actually see the light of day? And that's getting the people in these communities through stakeholder engagement on board before they shut down a project. So, those are our two big buckets. Yeah, strategic positioning, it's like how you talk about your company, how you do that. And then you also have this stakeholder engagement, which is how you're interacting with the people, the communities. We also throw crisis planning in there because, I mean, it's you always want to be prepared, and that's part of your commitment to a community is making sure you are prepared in those situations.
Well, speaking of preparation, what sort of challenges would you say arise in your line of work?
The challenges that we have is that the individuals within the companies that are building out infrastructure projects in this space are very confident, as they should be, in what they're doing, and they skip the step of bringing in, telling their story and engaging with the people. It's that proactive piece of this is the benefit that we're going to have versus kind of, oh, we have a problem and now they bring us in. So that's kind of anytime we can work with a company when they are in the early stages or when they're still vetting out a project, we see so much more success versus a project that has already gone in and started. And now they're like, oh, no, we have a problem. Let's bring in a firm. So that's where I see that challenge is really getting leadership on board with that proactive approach. But man, when they are, it's magic that happens with these projects. And so that's part of when I talk about everyone coming to the table, it's different sources, it's different types of individuals, and we're part of that. So part of that communications on here's the projects we're going about. You need all the people at the table so they can see it from the different perspectives and different angles to really ensure that infrastructure and innovation can take place.
That's terrific. My next question goes in a little bit of a different direction. How do you think we should leverage new technologies and innovation within the energy sector?
We should leverage it like crazy. I mean, AI is a huge benefit, and seeing what companies are able to do just in that space, taking a non energy technology and applying it has been a really cool opportunity that you're seeing just from being able to track data and track emissions and be able to predict things before they happen for the operations rooms. It's been a really neat technology add on into it. The other piece is where technology can play a role. There's no limit. That's where the innovation piece comes in. Is if you think of oil and gas, you think of energy and infrastructure just as its own sector, and that there's not any parallels. You're putting it in a box, but technology application from other industries, applying it and trying it is kind of where all the minds kind of meld together. So I think that's kind of the thing. It's technology and innovation looking outside of our boxes where I think we're going to unlock versus trying to fit the same situation over and over. Um, yeah, that's how I would sum that one up.
With all this being said, what would you like the public to know?
The public in general, what I would love for them to know is that just like everything, it's a little bit of everything. It's not one solution that is going to solve our energy challenge that we have facing us. I do believe it's the biggest challenge we're going to have in our generation. And it's there for us to solve if we work together and if we're open to how we solve it versus isolating ourselves and what we're comfortable with and or what we are passionate about. If we open that up and realize that everyone has something to bring to the table, then I think that is going to be where we find our solutions that are going to be there for us in the future, be there for our children in the future, and really make a difference.
What would you like policymakers and decision makers to know?
Policymakers and decision makers, man, talk about that table. They are key at that table. And I would guess for policymakers and decision makers, I would like them to consider that they are hearing all the perspectives and all the voices, and that they are a participant at that table, but they're also bringing energy experts to the table as they're evaluating different opportunities and different directions for the infrastructure industry to go.
My last question is in terms of lifespan. I don't really have a specific question around it, but I would love to hear your input on just lifespan of renewable energies. Talk about natural gas, perhaps, or just the kind of things that you see that are coming on the horizon that you want people to know more about that maybe the public doesn't have as good of an education on.
First of all, natural gas, we're an exporter of it. We have abundance. So when we consider the lifespan and where we should be putting a lot of energy, physical, mental energy into how do we innovate and make that sustainable, I do believe that should be a big focus area because we have the abundance of it. Even though it is a fossil fuel resource, it also has the opportunity of being very sustainable and good for the environment. And as more innovation comes on board, we're making that even cleaner. So then on the flip side, when I look at renewables, I would say renewables have their opportunity as well. And it's going to take that mix. And so as a lifespan goes, just as there's opportunity to make fossil fuels cleaner, there's the opportunity to make renewables more accessible and also clean up their process from a manufacturing and perspective as well. Both have opportunity for innovation and they're both going to be needed long term. So I would say, as long as we don't consider either one of them as irrelevant or going away, then and we apply innovation to both, we're going to end up with a really good mix of resources in the long run.
One of the things that we've been looking at is aging infrastructure and knowing already how many deficient bridges we have in the US. What is it going to look like once we reach kind of, is there a terminal point for these energy resources? And what is that going to look like when we're going to have to go back to point A, I suppose?
Everything ages. It's materials. And so really getting into how are we continuing to make those materials more sustainable and making those processes more sustainable. Because it is a missed view sometimes when looking at renewables is yes, the energy they're producing is clean, but their long-term sustainability and the aging has not really been figured out to its fullest yet. So how are we maintaining this infrastructure that's on the renewable side in a way that can extend its life? And then what are the plans whenever they are being retired? How are we incorporating that into further sustainability efforts? And that's where it goes to that innovation piece and looking at other industries. How are other metal is, wind turbines. Metal's not a source or a material that is only specific to wind turbines. So how are other industries handling the retirement of similar type of materials? And where can we apply that in this space as well? I think the biggest thing for us to all keep in our focus is that our three things we should be running any of our decisions on energy infrastructure and energy sources is it affordable? Is it reliable? And is it sustainable? And if we're looking at those three pieces through all the lenses and through all the innovation that we're trying to achieve, I have faith we'll come up with solutions. The thing is, you cannot prioritize one of those over another. We have to have reliable energy. Our world goes round, everything depends on it. It has to be affordable. And we cannot make energy into a social economic situation. And at the end of the day, it has to be sustainable because we have to look at the future and not just what the energy we're providing today.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. If you want to learn more about what we do, visit aii.org.